goats? No bugs? Right? Jai Radha Madhova Kunya Bihari Jai Radha Madhova Kunya Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhara Gure Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhara Gure Yasuranandana Vrajadana Ranjana Yasuranandana Vrajadana Ranjana Jamuna Te Ramana Chare Yamuna Tera Panachare Jayarad Umaruva Kunya Bihagote Jayaradu Kunya Bihagole Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhara Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhara Yasuranandana Braja Janaranjana Yasuranandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tera Manachade Yamuna Tera Manachare Jayo Radha Madhova Kunya Bihagode Jayo Radha Madhova Kunya Bihagode Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paramitacharya also Teta Satashi Shimad His Divine Grace Sabaya Charanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Anantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Srila Vilas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopi Gopinath Saima Kunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavanam ki jai. Mathuram ki jai. Jagattasami ki jai. Yamunamai ki jai. Shrimati Lasidevi ki jai. Samveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Gaur. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Dinamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharni Nivashesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarni. So reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, 46th chapter, text 29. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tayor Itang Bhagavati Krishna Nanda Yashodayo Vikshanu Ragam Paramang Nandam Ahodavo Muta Tayoritam Bhagavati Krishna Nanda Yashodayo Vikshanu Ragam Parampam Nandam Ahodavo Muta Tayoritam Bhagavati Krishna Nanda Yashodayo Vikshanu Ragam Paramang Nandam Ahodavo Muta Tayoritam Bhagavati Krishna Nanda Yashodayo Vikshanu Ragam Paramam Nandamahodavo Muta. Okay. Ladies. Good. So, anyone else? No other brave souls. All right. Tayo, of the two of them, Itam, like this. Bhagavati, for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna, Lord Krishna. Nanda Yashoda, of Nanda and Yashoda. Viksha, clearly seen. Anuragam, the loving attraction. Paramam, supreme. Nandam, to Nanda. Aha, spoke. Uddhava, Uddhava. Muda, with joy. Translation, Uddhava then joyfully addressed Nanda Maharaja. Having clearly seen the supreme loving attraction he and Yashoda felt for Krishna, the Supreme Personality of God is so, you can repeat. Uddhava then joyfully addressed Nanda Maharaja. Having clearly seen the supreme loving attraction he and Yashoda felt for Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, purport by the servants of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. If Uddhava had seen Nanda and Yashoda actually suffering, he would not have reacted with joy. But in fact, all emotions on the spiritual platform are transcendental bliss. The so-called anguish of the pure devotees is another form of loving ecstasy. This was clearly seen by Uddhava, and thus he spoke as follows. And then the commentaries by Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur. Observing very closely Viksha, the attraction of Nanda Yashoda for Krishna, though he was already familiar with high levels of prema, seeing that both in quantity and quality, it was superior to that of Vasudeva and Devaki. Uddhava became filled with bliss. He thought, now my life has become successful. Having seen such love, that is why, though seeing Nanda and Yashoda suffering, he appeared blissful. And then the commentary by Jiva Goswami. By the way they had acted, Uddhava directly saw Viksha, the prema filled with great thirst, anuragam, of Nanda and Yashoda, who were thinking with amazement of the two boys' condition. He directly saw that they had the highest paramam prema for the Supreme Lord Bhagavati, for the form with full manifestation of qualities. Of course, that's Krishna. He manifests more qualities than any of his other expansions, or his expansions manifest. You know, the four qualities, yes. Unexcelled beauty, loving devotees, intimate relationships, and he plays a flute. Okay. Uddhava spoke to Nanda because he was the chief of the two, and Nanda was doing all the talking, whereas Yashoda could not speak because of great agitation. He spoke to him to console him in joy. Ah, this is my good fortune that I have seen such prema. He spoke in joy, showing only this joyful element and not showing his distress at seeing their suffering. Since he had a predominance of awareness of Krishna's greatness, he first appreciated the greatness of their anurag and not the portion which felt intense pain. But the Lord would not have sent Uddhava if he thought he was not capable of pacifying them in their portion manifesting distress. So finally, Sanatana Goswami states, seeing such deep prema, anuragam of the rulers of Krishna, rulers of Braja for Krishna, full of sweetness, his own Lord, whose toenails are worshipped by Brahma and Shiva, Bhagavati, prema, which he had never seen before, he spoke to Nanda in astonishment, since Nanda was the main person, or Yashoda was incapable of hearing because of her disturbance from affection. Or Tayo means they had indescribable greatness or had the highest prema through a boon from Brahma, is what he was thinking. When they were Drona and Dara, actually they're eternally associates of Krishna, obviously. No one can become, Drona and Dara are actually expansions of Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda Maya. Nanda was he who gave joy to the universe by his great bhakti, or to Krishna by his great affection. Yashoda spread fame by controlling Krishna by her affection, tying him with a rope. He was astonished by their high qualification. Itam anuragam could also mean such prema. He saw the excellent highest affection increasing again and again, with choked voice and flowing tears described in previous verses. Experienced this directly. Uddhava spoke with affection, Buddha, since he was the best of devotees. He naturally became joyful on seeing the intense prema of the greatest devotees. Though he should have cried, he showed joy because he was endowed with qualities of the greatest advisor, Uddhava. He could not otherwise pacify them. And then again, the verse. Tayoritam Bhagavati Krishna Nanda Yashodayo Vikshanuragam Palamam Nandam Aho Davo Muda. So Omagana Timidanda Shagananjana Shalakya Chakshur Unmeditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So first I'm going to read this particular section from the Gopal Champu. When Nanda described Krishna's qualities to Uddhava, Yashoda became emotional. She perspired, milk flowed from her breasts, and tears flowed from her eyes. Uddhava, on seeing her, thought, she will become a river. So that's a previous verse, but now this verse today is, understanding this, Uddhava began to think, it's my great fortune to witness these two devotees inundated with such deep affection for Krishna, but this must be considered. It is most difficult for them to spend their time without him. It is impossible for my master to come here, and it is impossible for them to go there. Though it is impossible to destroy or weaken that natural affection, if it can be interrupted somewhat, it is possible for the two of them to survive, not otherwise. This restriction, this is really interesting, this is the topic today, and their affection can happen if they gain knowledge that he is the Supreme Lord, or knowing of his greatness caused by glorifying his prema. Now is a good opportunity to inform them, since Nanda has just mentioned that it is possible that Krishna is the Lord. According the Acharyas, in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, it says according to verse 23, but actually verse 23 doesn't say that. Verse 23, I made reference to it, says something different. It says, Manye Krishnam cha Ramam cha Prataviha Surotama Surana Mahad Artaya Gargasha Vachanam Yatat. It says the Gargamuni, basically, just to paraphrase the Sanskrit, the translation, not to give the direct translation, said basically they're great demigods. Didn't say that they were the Supreme Lord. So Uddhava's thinking, they were the Supreme Lord. Anyway, so he should explain it. So this is very interesting, and it involves, there were other ecstatic things I wanted to read here, but don't have time for everything. Actually, it involves something we call counseling. One of the things we learned in counseling is that you don't tell people how to think. You actually have to just empathize with them. So what Uddhava is going to do, and I'm giving a little coming attraction here, he's going to actually try to sort of interrupt their pain that he's seeing or perceiving by telling them of Krishna's greatness. Now, I was thinking of a particular comparison. Let's say that there was a mother who is feeling separation from her son. We're not even talking about Mother Yashoda now, just talking about a regular. Okay, let me go back. Okay, so anyway, I speak so loudly, I'm not even aware if the mic's working or not. So Anyway, so getting back to the point is that, okay, let's backtrack a little bit. So let's say Uddhava is remembering the instruction he got from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, what was that instruction? To pacify Nanda and Yashoda and the other residents of Vrindavan, because Krishna was very concerned with their suffering. So Uddhava, upon hearing about their suffering, particularly the suffering of Yashoda, let's go back a little bit now that I'm talking about their suffering. This is actually interesting too, and we're going to explain the suffering. He becomes overwhelmed with the desire to carry out his service and to help them. So let's read more about this. This is actually from the Nectar of Devotion. When Uddhava was present, Vrindavan was narrating, this is telling you more about the suffering he heard, and was narrating the activities of Krishna and Dwarka. Mother Yashoda, while hearing this narration, began to pour milk from her breast and shed tears from her eyes. Another incident demonstrating Yashoda's extreme love for Krishna occurred when Krishna went to Mathura, the kingdom of Kamsa. In separation from Krishna, this is just an illustration of Yashoda Maya's intense love. Mother Yashoda was looking at Krishna's makeup utensils. Krishna actually had makeup utensils. You ladies copy that. And she fell down on the ground almost unconscious with a great sound. When she was rolling over the ground, there were many scratches on her body, and in that piteous condition she began to cry, "Oh, my dear son, my dear son." And she slapped her breast with her two hands. This activity of Mother Yashoda is explained by expert devotees as ecstatic love and separation. Sometimes there are many other symptoms, such as great anxiety, lamentation, frustration, being stunned, humility, restlessness, madness, and illusion. As far as Mother Yashoda's anxieties are concerned, when Krishna was out of the house, all Nectar Devotion quotes, in the pasturing ground, a devotee once told her, "Yashoda, I think your movements have been slackened. I see that you are full of anxieties. Your two eyes." This is just when Krishna was out in the pasturing ground, not even when he went to Mathura. I mean, this is love. So one may think, what should I get into this love? "Your two eyes appear to be without any movement, and I feel in your breathing a kind of warmth which is bringing your breast milk to a boiling point." Phew! All these conditions prove that out of separation from your son, you have a severe headache. Just Krishna's out there in the pasture. He's going to come back in a little while. Of course, there's a yugayatam nimishena chakshusha pravashayatam shunyayatam jagat sarvam govinda vinahename. This is another one. When Akrura was present and Vrindavan was narrating the activities of Krishna and Dwarka, Mother Yashoda was informed that Krishna had married so many queens and was very busy in his household affairs. Hearing this, Mother Yashoda lamented how unfortunate she was that she could not get her son married just after he passed his Kaishora age. As we know, she wanted to get him married to Radharani. Even there's this kund, what's it called, the Pilu kund or something, the yellow kund. Anyone's been there? Near where Krishna was living, where it's an interesting story that Yashoda Maya, she wanted to marry Krishna with Srimati Radharani, so she took Radharani's hands and she smeared them with turmeric. Right? You know that story? And Radharani was very embarrassed. She actually just went to this kund, just washed her hands and everything, and that kund is still yellow today. So she really wanted to get Krishna married to Srimati Radharani. And that she could not receive both her son and daughter-in-law at her home. This is another motherly affection. The mother gets her son married and she wants to receive them at home. She wants to move in with them, which is actually the Vedic system. The mother moves in with the son and the son's wife. She exclaimed, "My dear Akrura, you are simply throwing thunderbolts on my head. These are signs of lamentation on the part of Mother Yashoda in separation from Krishna." Similarly, Yashoda Maya felt frustration when she thought, although I have millions of cows, the milk of these cows could not satisfy Krishna, therefore let a curse be on this milk. And this is the love, just hearing the love of the residents. Because I'm so opulent in material prosperity, I'm now unable to smell the head of my child and feed him with my breast milk as I used to do when he was here in Vrindavan. This is a sign of frustration on the part of Mother Yashoda in separation from Krishna. One friend of Krishna's, another quote from the NOD, thus, my dear friend of Krishna addressed him thus, my dear lotus-eyed one, when you were living in Gokula, you were always bearing a stick in your hand. That stick is now lying idle in the house of Mother Yashoda. And whenever she sees it, she becomes motionless just like the stick. So that's, vibhava, which is udipana, things related to Krishna. This is a sign of becoming stunned in separation from Krishna. And separated from Krishna, Mother Yashoda became so humble that she prayed to the creator of the universe, Lord Brahma, with tears in her eyes. My dear creator, won't you kindly bring my dear son Krishna back to me so that I can see him at least for a moment? Sometimes in restlessness, like a mad woman, Mother Yashoda used to accuse Nanda Maharaj, what are you doing in this palace, you shameless man? Why do people call you the king of Braj? It is very astonishing that while being separated from your dear son Krishna, you are still living within Vrindavan as a hard-hearted father. This is Divyonmada, transcendental madness. Someone informed Krishna about the madness of Mother Yashoda in the following words. In madness, Mother Yashoda has addressed the Kadamba trees and inquired from them, where's my son? Similarly, she has addressed the birds and the drones and inquired from them whether Krishna has passed before them, and she has inquired if they can say anything about you. In this way, Mother Yashoda in illusion has been asking everyone about you, and she's been wandering all over Vrindavan. This is madness and separation from Krishna. When Nanda Maharaj was accused by Mother Yashoda of being hard-hearted, he replied, my dear Yashoda, why are you becoming so agitated? Kindly look more carefully. Just see your son Krishna is standing before you. This is Nanda Maharaj's madness. Don't become a mad woman like this. Please keep my home peaceful. And Krishna was informed by some friend that his father Nanda was also in illusion in this way in separation from him. So there's an interesting question that arises before I get into Uddhava's counseling. Okay, the question arises: then why don't they all go to join Krishna? Isn't it? Krishna is there. Krishna would be very happy to see them. Krishna was happy in Kurukshetra to see them, right? So that question is answered in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita very, very nicely. In the second portion of the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, text 364, this is just the translation. I'm not going to read the Sanskrit. Actually, some of the Sanskrit's really nice, which I'll read. After striving for so long in so many ways, with so many desires in your heart, you achieve Krishna's abode. So this is, the context of this is that Gopakumar had gone through all these different trials and tribulations and all these different planetary systems, and finally he reached Goloka Vrindavan. And his disciple, he's come back to the earth planet, to Boma Vrindavan, that means the earth Vrindavan, which we visit, and his disciple is asking him a question. You've achieved Krishna's abode. So now that he has gone to Mathura, Madhupuri, where will you reside and how will you live? And so in the commentary, is the commentary by Sanatana Goswami, translated by my godbrother Gopi Pranadana Prabhu. It says, for a long time, Gopakumar had harbored the desire to see Gopal Deva and join him in his pastime, so he had done that. Now Gopakumar has finally reached his destination, Goloka Vrindavan, but Krishna has left Vrindavan to go to Mathura. You spend all this time, and he really spent a lot of time. He became Lord Brahma at one point, he was Indra at one point, a king at one point, went to Vishnu Loka at one point, and finally goes back to Vrindavan and Krishna leaves. Now Gopakumar has finally reached his destination, Goloka Vrindavan, but Krishna has left Vrindavan to go to Mathura. Under the circumstances, how can Gopakumar tolerate living in Braj? Since he is attached to the countryside where Krishna performed his childhood pastimes, how can he consider living in Mathura? So that is answered in the next text, which is text 365. And the beautiful Sanskrit for this verse. Shri Sarupa Avacha, that means Sarupa says, Adeshena Prabho Tasha, that means the Lord left the abode. Braji Nanda di Sahav, Nanda Maharaj's place. Vasanta Madhusha Sarve Tatra Swa Sadrashai stood up. He said, by the order of the Lord, I and all the devotees like me continue to live in Braj in the company of Nanda and the others whose moods resemble ours. So here's the commentary. When Krishna left Braj, he gave special instructions to the new devotees who had come to his abode on the strength of his mercy and their spontaneous Raganuga sadhana. He told them to remain in Braj and continue to associate with great devotees like Nanda, whose ways of devotion were similar to their own. Otherwise, if the new devotees were to go to Mathura, the incompatible mood would disturb them and their spiritual development would be impeded. Interesting, isn't it? So, with such considerations, such considerations in mind, Sri Hari Bhakti Shuddhaya 213 states, if an intelligent person wants to see his families prosper, he should stay in it with his own kind. So in other words, if those of you who want to go to Braj, you should stay with those who are Brajavasis. Not go, I mean, we respect the Vaikuntavasis like that, but you stay with those who are Brajavasis that have that mood, that spontaneous mood. And then in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, another verse, this is the nature of Goloka, Krishna's world. Even in his absence, the residents want to stay. None wants to go anywhere else. There, sorrow dances vigorously on the head of every kind of happiness, and anguish gives a joy more intense than any bliss. This is really an explanation of the separation. It's actually more joyful than any type of bliss. Now, from our perspective, it's very hard to understand it, isn't it? But it's love. It's a loving relationship, an intense, loving, intimate relationship that they wouldn't experience outside of Vrindavan. And just finally, I'll read the commentary, and then I'll go back to the topic that I was speaking about before. In Goloka, the apparent misery of separation from Krishna is in fact the greatest happiness, and the anxiety felt by the Goloka Vasis is more ecstatic than any other pleasure. As already explained, both these contrary effects are due to the unique nature of the special love for Krishna found only in Vrindavan. My God. So, all right, so let's get back to the point of Uddhava has this service. He's thinking, they're really suffering. He's appreciating the love, but he's thinking, I have this service of pacifying them, making them feel better. So basically he's thinking, I can't stop their love, but I can sort of interrupt the flow a little bit by telling them that Krishna is God. Now think about that for a second. I was thinking of this example, what I was talking about before I interrupted myself, that let's say there's a mother who loves a child very, very much, and the child happens to be, let's say there's the mother, if the mother, oh my God, of the President of the United States, whoever that is, was living like in California, and the President of the United States was in Washington, D.C., right? That's where the President usually is. And so the mother's feeling separation from her son. So I go to the mother, naturally being empathic, and I tell her, don't feel separation from your son. Your son is the president. Does that make sense? I mean, emotionally, your son is the president. That's what we call non sequitur. It just doesn't follow logically. So Uddhava is getting ready to do this to try to carry out Krishna's instruction. And it doesn't really work with the residents of Vrindavan. So, in other words, he didn't fully understand that this was the greatest ecstasy that they were experiencing. He was seeing through the eyes of a Dwarka or Mathura Vasi. And so, anyway, but still, he's trying his best. And then later on, of course, we're going to read how he appreciates the love of as we get further in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the love of the gopis for Krishna, when there's this famous section of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is like the Radharani addressing the bumblebee. So, anyway, so that's all I had to talk about today. So anyone have any questions or comments? I mean, I have more of the ecstatic symptoms of the residents of Vrindavan, but you get the idea. Any questions? Yes. Well, it's whenever they don't see Krishna, whether Krishna is in Vrindavan or Krishna is outside of Vrindavan, whenever Krishna is not right in front of their eyes, then they feel this mood of separation. So Krishna could be like in the next room. I mean, even there's a story with Srimati Radharani, and Madhu Mangal, of course, is Krishna's friend. And there was a bumblebee bothering her, bumblebee bee or whatever. And Krishna was there, right in front of her eyes. And the bumblebee, of course, was there. Madhu Mangal was there. Madhu Mangal is Krishna's funny friend who tells a lot of jokes. And he likes ladus. So, but he got rid of the bumblebee, or the bee. Was it bumblebee or stinging bee or something? And the name of a bee is Madhu, which is also a name of Krishna. Actually, in Hindi called Madhumaki, isn't it? It's in Hindi, the name of a bee. But for short, sometimes you say Madhu, which means sweet. Madhurang, Madhurang, Madhurang. So Krishna is also known as Madhusudana, and sometimes it's abbreviated as Madhu. So Madhu Mangal got rid of the bee. He said, Madhu is gone. And Radharani thought he meant that Krishna was gone. So even though Krishna was there right in front of her, she started crying and she couldn't see Krishna. And she exhibited all these intense symptoms of ecstasy. That's how much love there is. I mean, one can appreciate it to a certain extent by observing the love of a good mother for her child. I mean, to a certain extent. Like when the child cries at night, the mother gladly gets up. Anyway, the mother feels pain when her child cries, and she picks the child up and placates the child. And so, but the love of Mother Yashoda for Krishna is infinitely greater than that. So you just magnify the love that you see that a mother has for her son or daughter, and you magnify it like an unlimited amount of times. And that's Yashoda Maya's love. What to speak of the gopis' love for Krishna? Madhu is gone. And she just faints in ecstasy. So it's not necessarily a physical separation, it's just that you think that Krishna is not there. Even thinking that Krishna is not there is enough to evoke the symptoms of ecstasy. It's pretty intense, isn't it? Yugayitam nimishena chakshusha pravashayitam, which means one experiences a nimisha, which is sometimes described, there's different things. People sometimes say it's a tenth, sometimes 11th or a fifth of a second. I've read different descriptions of nimisha, but it's less than a second. So, yugayitam nimishena. So, feeling your separation, even a moment, even a tenth of a second or 11th of a second, is like the whole world is useless, hopeless, no meaning to it. And that's the experience of the residents of Vrindavan when Krishna's not there. And you may say, why does Krishna do that? Well, that increases the love exponentially, that separation. And there's more ecstasy. I mean, even in this world, I think when a mother is separated from her child and thinks of her child, she feels great pleasure simultaneously, isn't it? She feels pain, obviously. But there's this feeling of love in the heart. It's an all satisfying thing. She doesn't, in other words, the mother doesn't think of anything else. She's completely absorbed. So what to speak of Yashoda Mai? Therefore, she doesn't think of cleaning the house. She doesn't think of cooking for Nanda Maharaj. He doesn't tell her, you're a Vedic wife. You should be in the kitchen cooking. She doesn't do anything. She's just stunned like that. And this goes on for years and years and years. The question is, how do they remain alive? Krishna personally keeps them alive. So, any other questions? I mean, it's intense. Yeah. A spurti. It's called a spurti. Yeah. That's a good question. Krishna Priya also mentioned that yesterday with the coward boys sometimes thinking that Krishna is there in Vrindavan. Sometimes they realize he's not too. I researched that thing too. But how can you distinguish? That's why we need the association of great sadhus and other devotees who are more advanced, so we can reveal to them in confidence that last night I had a spurti. Krishna asked me to dance with me. Dance with him. Last night, realization. We all have realizations, and so we should reveal our mind. And in the Jaiva Dharma, you have this sannyasi who had this spurti of Mayapur, the way it used to be when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was present. And he didn't, there's no discussion that no indication he revealed it to his guru, but he took it as an impetus because it was in accordance with Shastra. So that's another point. You have to see if your spurti is in accordance with Shastra, or it's just like your imagination. Of course, another point is even if you imagine something in accordance with Shastra, Krishna is present. Like you can manifest the deity in the mind. Like if you think about Radha Golokananda and you picture them in your mind, just like I mentioned the other day in class, that sometimes, because I'm in Maya, I may picture my little dog that I had before I joined the Krishna consciousness movement in my mind. So he's not present. That's just an illusion. But if I picture Krishna in the mind, that's a deity. That's a type of deity. And so Krishna is there. So if something's in accordance with Shastra, and not something sahaja, where Krishna comes up and kisses you in the middle of the night, then you realize that's your husband. So then if it's in accordance with Shastra, obviously, and your level of realization and everything like that, then Krishna's present. Yeah. It's true. I mean, if you actually picture the deities in your mind, Radhagolokananda, then the deities are there. That's why a pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada is always in Vrindavan, because you are where your consciousness is at, where your mind is at, not necessarily where your physical body is.
Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Bhagavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandar Agom Vidamaniya Vishesha Shobha Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasa Sakalen Priya Priti Manti Lasyan Dipan Kayanti Jiram Naganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Jala Vigrahasya Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Jami Namaham Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Mutalai Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Samini Kamane Saraswati Devi Gauravani Vajane Nivesesha Shunyavani Vasjajane Sajarane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Vajane Nivesesha Shunyavani Ashachare Satchane Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Karuna Janana Chitweta Gatada Silasani Norakta Dara Sri Krishna Sri Advaita Gadada Sivasade Gorakta Sri Krishna Chaitanya Ramanityananda Svaita Gadada Sivasade Gorakta Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Ramanityananda Svaita Gadada Sivasade Gorakta Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Ramanityananda Svaita Gadada Sivasade Gorakta Vrinda Ramanityananda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Ati Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Krishna Krishna Hare